Hi, welcome to the Craft Beer Runner. I'm Jack Rosenfeld, your host. Here we'll be building community around good people and good beer. Today we're drinking Good Society's Saison de Quat, a Kumquat Saison at 7.2%. Good Society Breweries out in West Seattle. Besides making good beers, they also donate a portion of the proceeds to local charities, including the West Seattle Food Bank.
Excited about this one.
Pouring from a crowler is sometimes tough.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Getting some on my knees. Here with me today is my friend Kevin Klein. He is the founder of Northwest Peaks Brewing. He started in 2009.
Yep.
Originally from Wisconsin. His background's in life sciences and virology. He has a PhD from the University of Washington, as well as he is a Badger.
All right.
And before he started his brewery, he was a home brewer. So Kevin, welcome to the channel.
Thanks for having me, and
Cheers.
thanks for bringing the beer. Excited about it.
Enjoy.
Cheers.
What do you think about that so far?
Good. It's
Yeah.
a nice saison, pretty dry.
It's perfect for this 85-degree day in
Yeah.
Seattle.
Yep, and it's got a nice farmhouse character, not excessive at all, and kind of cut a little bit by the sweetness and the fruitiness of the kumquat. Pretty well balanced. You don't get like the excessive fruit flavor, but it balances the farmhouse.
So
Yep.
let's talk a little bit about how you got interested in home brewing. So I believe you told me before this, you started when you were in college, right around the age of 21,
Yep.
for the record.
I think it was after I was 21, but it could have been before. I was definitely drinking beer before I was 21, but I've got a sister that's 2 years older than I am, and she and her at the time boyfriend were into home brewing, and so she decided, and I expressed interest. So she, for Christmas, used my parents' money for them to buy me a homebrew system that she would have wanted because she had experience. And I had never homebrewed before in my life, but I was interested. And for Christmas, I got somebody that had been doing it for a while, a system that they wanted. So I started out with a pretty good system that I didn't have to cobble together myself.
And so you said your sister was already brewing for a couple of years. Did she influence your first batch? Or, I mean, we're talking about before you could just Google how to homebrew and go on YouTube and look this up. So.
If you're a home brewer, you know the Bible, you know Charlie Papazian's The Guide to Homebrewing. That's pretty much what I had.
Okay.
And no, she got me the equipment, got me set up to do it, and then I was on my own.
Right, and so you moved to Seattle about a year or so after you graduated from Wisconsin.
Yep.
Did you bring your homebrew system with you?
Of course.
All right.
I think that's the only thing that was in the car when I moved out. No, I definitely brought that out there. I had expanded it significantly since those first few batches, but I was hooked by then.
From the time you did your first batch, and how long was it until you had a beer you're like, this is actually really good?
I can't remember. The first beer was actually really good. I took it. There was something. It didn't. The terminal gravity, which is you probably know this, but I'll just is the amount of sugars left in solution, and usually you want it at, let's pick a number called 16. This was at 24, and I was really worried about it. It didn't taste sweet, but that means that there's a lot of sugars left in there, and it's going to be sweet. I took it to a homebrew club meeting, and the brewer at the brew pub it's like, oh, this tastes good. There's nothing wrong with it. And so the first batch actually turned out, it was a brown ale. It was not something that I'd write home about, but it turned out, and most of my batches were solid. And I can't remember when I just started knocking things out of the park. for my own taste buds.
And so you said it was a brown ale. Is that the styles you started with, and how were the styles evolving as you were continuing the process?
So there what my concept when I started was I don't know if this is gonna turn out. So what do I want to hide off flavors? Either you can hop the crap out of it and hide behind hops, or you can hide behind malt. And I was not a hop head. This was back in the late 1990s, so hops, really big IPAs weren't the thing yet. Or they were becoming the thing, but they weren't the thing yet. So I preferred maltier beers. So I preferred like a brown ale, and I didn't want to do a stout. I don't know why. I don't think I'd gotten the taste buds for the richness of a stout at that point. Again, I was 21 years old. So I just kind of wanted something maltier, a little bigger that could hide any off flavors. And so once I couldn't assess off flavors in those first few batches, then I started doing lighter stuff or becoming more adventurous with what I was doing.
Right, and then so you came here to Seattle around 2000, around then, like early 2000, and you started officially Northwest Peaks in 2009.
2009, yes.
And you were homebrewing as a side project. How did that? You had so basically a decade. How did that evolve from, just doing homebrewing to scaling that up to wanting to do some type of business where you would get a permit and register?
So I'm a microbiologist by trade. So I study virology, not mycology, which is study of yeast. But I was in a department where that was going on, mycology, and it's all related. So I treated home brewing like an experiment, rigorous notes, kind of note keeping and everything, and I ended up wanting to be brewing more than I did. I got disillusioned a little bit by the science and the politics as you climb the ladder, and I found myself wanting to be brewing and playing around with my setup more than I did going into work. And but I didn't think there's a possibility that I could just start a business. And on the Burke Gilman, there was actually somebody doing it in kind of a garage, and you could fill up growlers or whatever. And I'm like, oh, you can do it at this size. And that's when I started putting plans together, because I didn't realize that you could do it at such a commercially at almost a homebrew scale. Yeah.
Are there, go a little bit off topic, but are there currently any similar businesses out there in this current environment where at that scale, or has it gone more towards you have to have a tap room?
There are, they're fewer and farther between. I think most that are out there are kind of at the size where we grew to within a year, but still just in a 700 square foot area. The one that started before I did, probably 5 years before, was Foggy Noggin up in Bothell here in King County, and he has an annexed shed where he brews, and so they just brew small batches up there, but it's on actually private land, but it's an annexed area. And I think there's a couple other, there's wineries definitely, and cideries that are doing it in smaller active space or like garages, storage sheds. But there are very small, I'll call it less than 3 barrel systems out there. But we quickly grew to a 3 barrel system.
Right, and then so you started, garage brewing.
Yes.
Not your personal garage, but so you started garage brewing, and then tell me the story, or tell everyone the story about losing that lease. and how that forced you to grow.
Those were dark days. Yeah, so we were. I was looking to expand, and our lease kind of ran out, so I was on a month to month. But I was working with the current landlord to actually grow the building, and I won't get into other details, but we were going to make it a larger complex with other. It was right when pot was legalized, so I'll just see that out there. And so we were going to make a more of a complex with multiple things going on, not just a nano brewery or a microbrewery, but other. So for construction, I signed a lease to move the tap room across the street. As soon as I did that, the landlord where we were at cut ties with us, and so I had this new lease where I had to build out, but I couldn't produce there. That was going to be a retail tap room only, or a restaurant tap room, and so while I was building that out, I had to clear out the brewery and put that into storage, and then it took me 4 years or so to actually find a location with everything else going on, to the location to move production into. So those 4 years were pretty. There was a lot of work, pretty dark, but yeah.
Doing contract brewing at that time.
So for the stopgap, yeah,
Right.
I worked with, and this was actually really fun. Some people call it gypsy brewing, some people call it contract brewing, but I was kind of nomadic, and I actually brewed our beer, Northwest Peaks Brewery's beer, at 5 or 6 different locations. So I was always there. I was never mashing in or doing the grunt work, but I did what I could. But I was always there. I shouldn't say doing the grunt work. I did the grunt work. I didn't push the buttons. But I got to see 6 or 7 and physically actually see 5 or 6 different brewery systems and setups, and just how other breweries actually functioned, and kind of what they liked about their brew systems and that kind of stuff. So it was very informative, but yeah, the logistics of doing all of that created a huge burden for me.
Right. You mentioned earlier, off camera, about your business model when you first started. It was fascinating, actually, of a business model. You were talking about kind of not necessarily a subscription model, but kind of a subscription model for your beer. Do you want to talk about your influence from the agriculture industry, as well as what that model was?
So yes, it was exactly how I phrased it, because a lot of people don't know what CSA or CSB are. It was a subscription program. So yeah, it got modeled after community-supported agriculture, where you get a share of a farm for the summer. You prepay, and then you get you get part of the farm's produce. And I went, thought I'd do the same thing for beer, because I was doing this on the side, small scale. So it was kind of a growler of the month club, or a growler subscription program, where we do different beers every single month. So I can guarantee people that tried 12 different things, which was not the norm at the time. The norm was, we've got our flagship 5 beers. Manny's. So Georgetown was 3 years old at the time. They made 1 or 2 beers. The model was each brewery focuses on their flagship products, and this was, no, I want to bring you guys, to my subscribers, a variety. So over 12 years, you'd get 12 different beers, and with that, I knew how much I would have to make, when the release was going to need to be, and so I could kind of control all of those variables, or control things at a smaller scale, which I needed to do because we were such a small scale, and I was also doing it on the side, so I could allocate my time as well. Well, after a few months, things started things started expanding, and we started doing more retail or just walk-in service and that kind of stuff. But that's kind of how we started. And then I planned for growth based on the subscription program, but I needed to plan growth for subscription, but also retail and wholesale. And that wasn't in the initial plans for me. But yeah, that was how I wanted to get my concoctions, is what I'll call them, my styles and my beers, out to the hyper local area.
Right. Yeah, and how did you, when you first started in 2009, doing this new model that isn't really used that much? How did you get your customer base? How did you get your following? And this is also probably before social media too.
No, social media was a big thing, and it was mostly friends of friends of friends. So word of mouth, and I knew a lot of friends wanted to support me, and so that was the base. And then things just kind of expanded from there. And then we used social media, and then we needed a website, and we opened. The first year was right around Christmas, and so there was a big campaign to try to get people to get Christmas gifts, a subscription for their beer loving whoever in the Seattle area, and so that timed it correctly on that one to get a lot of gifts, and it was a great gift from people that were out of town to give their Seattle beer lover.
And then Northwest Peaks. So talk to me a little bit about how you came up with the name for the brewery, as well as I'm also curious, and I think a lot of people are curious about, how do you come up with names for beers? Let's talk about the brewery name first.
Well, the latter one's the easier part. It was very easy for me. The former is my two. This venture was kind of on the side, but it was on the side, kind of blended together my two hobbies that I really developed and fell in love with while I went to grad school to get the PhD. And I fell in love with the North Cascades and the mountaineering. And so Northwest Peaks was kind of my playground in my own backyard when I wasn't brewing in my own, literally, backyard. And so it was kind of a blend of those two things. So it was kind of taking up the climbing and the regional geographical area that we were in, where I'd rather be in the mountains than in the city.
Right, and then a lot of your beers were named after peaks that you summited, correct?
Pretty much all of them. Until we started doing too many beers that I couldn't keep up with the naming because I was working at the brewery as opposed to climbing anymore. So the flagships are all Northwest or North Cascades summits that have a special place in my heart and have significant meaning to a lot of the climbers out here, or they're just majestic major peaks out in the area.
And then I want to end it with 4 questions.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I sent you my answers, but so first is, what was your first experience that you can remember with beer?
I can't remember. I don't know. I'm sure I had something at home and I hated it, and I purged that out of my mind. It would have been probably at a high school party, probably when I was a sophomore or junior. I was not a big drinker earlier in my life, so it's probably been, at a outdoor get together when I was a sophomore or junior in college, or not college, in high school. Trying to fit in with cool kids. So yeah.
Yeah, I was telling you, since this is our first video, so everyone knows, my first experience, I think I was 5, if even that. And my dad, who was not a drinker at all, especially not a beer drinker, he was at a friend's house and he had some cheap American beer. And I pointed at it. I must have been under less than 5. I had to have been under 5 if I just pointed and not said anything. He gave me a sip, and I was like trying to take it off my mouth. It was disgusting, and I still think that about cheap American beer. So it was a good introduction to cheap American beer. Next question is, what's your favorite style of beer that you enjoy drinking? Not what you enjoy brewing, what you enjoy drinking.
Right now it's a kumquat saison. It's the beer that's in front of me. I like beer, and there's only a couple things that I would say that I don't like. I don't like American Hefeweizens. I like German authentic Hefeweizens. I don't like wheat beer that doesn't have flavor. Give me a time and place on after climbing a mountain when it's 100 degrees back at the car, sure, a tasteless beer like that would be great. But I just like a well-made beer. That there's a place and a time for all styles.
It's funny because I love beer, but I actually, after a long run or a long race specifically, I'll go with a hard liquor. I'm known for drinking whiskey or scotch at the finish line of an ultra, straight from the bottle. I told you in my email, my favorite styles are specifically hazy IPA.
Yeah.
I love how the citrus just cuts through the hops. I mean, I love a good West Coast hoppy beer that hits you in the face, but the citrus just has a nice element of cut through it.
Yeah.
And then also sours. They're great for days like today.
Yep.
And
depends on the sour, but
well,
you can get really heavy sours too. But
I think that's a debate for another video. What a sour is, because it's not necessarily a real style. Because it can be anything from a pale ale to I've had a 13% sour hit you in the face down at one of my favorite breweries in Cleveland, Ohio. So yeah, they can really range what a sour is. You can think you're getting a good beer, and you can just I'm drinking a light beer right now. This is not good.
And I'll probably get chastised on certain on the web for this, but yeah, you've got Gozas and Berliner Weisses too, and I personally don't consider those sours. They're tart. They have lactic acid in them, so they are sour. But they're young sours. The whole process of doing that is different than the other ones. And again, that's a discussion, a debate. Sorry, for probably for a whole nother episode for you. But yeah, but they're.
I'd love to bring you back to talk about that.
I love sours as well. So
we can have a style debate on a future episode. What are you drinking locally? I know you say you drink what's in front of you. You're living here in Seattle. What's been your recent go-to?
The recent go-to is any IPA. I'm not going out anymore because of COVID. Also, I'm trying to cut back on expenses, but there are so many good IPAs out there that if a brewery doesn't make a good IPA, they're not going to last in this environment.
Right.
And that's not true. There are some that can do something else really well, and I can name a few of those breweries. But a lot of times you have to find that one good beer, or you can choose one of 8 IPAs that are going to be good. So when I go out, that's what I do. When I'm making my own beer or whatever I have in-house, I stay away from the IPAs. But yeah, the IPA is probably what I go to 95% of the time, unless I recognize something that I know that I want.
For me, I'm right now drinking mostly Good Society because of COVID, because it is my local brewery. It's walking distance from where I live. And they, like I said earlier, they support good causes, and I'm happy to have a business that opened right before everything shut down be able to stay open, and I'm drinking local for sure.
Yeah.
And then lastly, back when we could imagine traveling, because when we're shooting this video, we still can't imagine to do that. Outside,
I can imagine.
Outside the state of Washington, I'm assuming you're going to go to Wisconsin on this answer, but what's your favorite brewery outside of Washington?
I'm gonna punt on this. I don't know, but I've got sentimental answers, and I'd go the Angelic. That's where my first homebrew club was. It's a brew pub in Madison on Johnson Street. I can remember the building, and the brewer there used to be the brewer at Oasis. And I don't know how I remember this from like 2 months into homebrewing. But they no longer exist. But I like their beer. I think it was more sentimental than quality, but I really like that location. And since they don't no longer exist, I don't know how relevant it is to the. So I will choose my other one, which is Left Hand. And my sister moved out to Boulder County, and she lived a couple blocks away from Left Hand. She won a couple pro-ams, so she got to brew her own beer there. And again, more sentimental. I'd always go there with her, drink her beer that she made there, and also they make really good beer too. So those would be my cop-out answers. But when I do go out to the grocery store or to any brew pub out here, I always order Washington beer. I stay local, right. Support the local breweries. I know so many brewery owners that I want to support them.
Yeah.
And when I travel to Colorado, if I ever do that again, I'll support Colorado business owners.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And I think also from an environmental standpoint, as good as some of my favorite beers are from outside of Washington, like the environmental impact of bringing them to the state of Washington, the trucking of the beer to get a 12-ounce can or a 16-ounce bottle or whatever is not necessarily worth it. But when I do start traveling again, I love Mumford Brewing down in LA. He's actually a good friend of mine. I went to business school with him, and then in Ohio, my family's in Ohio, in Cleveland, and just outside of Cleveland is BottleHouse, and they make some incredible sours. Like as mentioned earlier, they make some really strong, hit you in the face, 12+% sours, and they do some very interesting things in that brewery, and I enjoy it.
You mentioned that too, and Cascade Barrel House is one of my favorite, and it's only in Portland. It's only 2.5 hours away, but I'll make a special trip to Portland just to go try that. And we're getting some sours here in Seattle.
Yeah.
But again, that's like they do it well, and it's kind of this genre of beer that you can't get all over the place. And so just being able to go to that brewery or go to that area and get it would be great. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kevin, for our first video. I mean, I get to see you occasionally because of COVID, but Kevin actually used to put on a run club at Northwest Peaks, which was awesome. Anything that combines running and beer, kind of the name of the channel, is fun. But it's good to catch up with a good friend of mine, and hope you all got a good introduction to Northwest Peaks and to Kevin and Homebrewing today. So. If you get a chance, please like this video. Please subscribe to my channel. We'll be putting out videos once a week, mostly interview style. We'll be doing some fun things as well. I want to do some beer miles by style with craft beer, or maybe quasi-craft beer, because who knows who owns who. I'd like to explore some of the tech behind beer these days. There's tons of apps that help people find new beers, help people learn what is a craft beer. I just found a new app that you can type in the brewery name and they can tell you if they're owned by a conglomerate or not. So that's a good app. I'll talk about that later. And then also I want to do my first homebrew. I got nothing else to do during lockdown, so why not explore and hope not to blow up my apartment. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you, Kevin. This was fun and gorgeous day in Seattle to be drinking a beer. Right.
Thanks for having me, and is there anything left in there?
Oh, yeah.
Let's pour that out. Not out, but out of the crowler and into the cans.
I'll let you finish it.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.